Just got an update from Brother Wood about his wife and daughter. They're in Virginia now on the Appalachian Trail. So they're moving along, and we're glad to hear that they're doing well. Brother Wood, Davis, sitting on the back. You didn't recognize him, has his mask on, but he's in the back. Anyway, Michael Weaver's surgery was successful. He's very sick, nauseated from the medication they had to give him, the anesthesia and all. But he's otherwise doing well, and they think he should be able to go home perhaps tomorrow, and the latest will be Friday. So again, we're very thankful to report that. Dean Stone is back on the ventilator, but they put him on the ventilator because they had to put in a, what do you call that? A drain on your liver, a shunt. I've never heard of that procedure. Don't understand it, but there's a shunt on his liver to drain it. And to do that, they had to put him back on the ventilator, but he's still on it. So we're hoping that that doesn't mean he's going to be stuck there for a while. Hopefully it's just till the trauma of this procedure is over. We had some very distressing news about Charlie Prince from the Lithia Springs congregation. He's been attending our classes on Wednesday morning. We learned this morning that he has cancer in his lungs and his liver. And so we're very distressed to hear this and are asking all of you to pray in a special way for him. Bubba is in the hospital in Carrollton and has suffered another stroke. And so we certainly want to remember Bubba. But other than those distressing comments, it has been a beautiful day. And I would say it's because this is the day my mother was born. And that may be why it's so beautiful. I don't know, but she makes things beautiful. But she's now 30 for the third time today. And that's a milestone. And so we're very thankful for her. And you look very nice today, actually quite nice. And so we're very thankful for your good health and your ability to be with us and your sweet, encouraging words. We're still in Luke chapter 6, and so I want to encourage you to turn there with me this evening. But before we pick up reading in chapter 6, I want you to get you to mark that and then turn with me to Matthew 12. You know, last week we referenced this and we didn't actually have a chance to finish it. You know, Jesus had the theme of this chapter so far has been challenging the religious establishment on their Sabbath observance. And Jesus has already exposed their hypocrisy. And so now he's going to do it again. And it's almost, you get the impression that he's doing these things on the Sabbath day by design to drive home this very point. And I'm fairly certain that's the reason we're seeing this. In Matthew 12, we have a parallel account to what we're reading in Luke 6. But there's some additional information in Matthew 12. We already read Luke 6 last week. We'll go back and touch on that again in a minute if we need to. But I want to pick up at verse 9 of Matthew 12. Again, this is a parallel text. When he had departed from there, he went into their synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand, and they asked him, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" That they might accuse him. He said to them, "What man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value then is a man than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand," and he stretched it out, and it was restored as whole as the other. And so the Pharisees went out and plotted against him how they might destroy him. They wanted to destroy him because he made them appear utterly foolish. And it was their hypocrisy that made them appear so foolish. They understood, it was widely recognized and widely accepted and condoned that if in fact you had a sheep or an ox that fell in the ditch on the Sabbath day, it would be perfectly lawful to rescue that animal from the ditch, even though it was the Sabbath. They recognize this, and yet when Jesus sees a human being in distress and he decides to heal that human being, they want to challenge him. They want to question him over that. And Jesus says something that's not really profound. It does have profound significance, but in our particular age, perhaps it is profound. Is not a man more valuable than a sheep? I mean, we ask ourselves a question like that, and we think, duh, of course. And we even have laws in this state. In fact, even in California, they have laws that make it illegal to kill people. And they may not prosecute you for it, but it is actually on the books illegal to kill people, human beings. It's illegal to kill animals. However, there are slaughterhouses in California. They kill chickens, they kill pigs, they kill cows, they kill all kinds of animals. They even have fisheries, and fish are caught and they're disposed of and eaten. So animals are killed by people routinely, even in places like California and Washington State and other odd places in the world like that. They still think of animals as less than human. And they should, because animals are not equal to human beings. Now, what's interesting is that when Jesus said this, he said this as the creator of both sheep and men. Jesus made everything. The Gospel of John, chapter 1, without him was not anything made that was made. He gave life to all things. So when you think about the significance of a human being, Jesus did not come into the world to die to save sheep or goats or pigs or dogs, even cute lap dogs. He didn't come to save them either. He came to save you and me, because human beings have intrinsic value over and well beyond any animal on planet Earth. Now, it's sad that I have to say that and to have to observe that, but that's the world we live in. I've had people say to me, they prefer animals over people. Generally, they're people that are twisted and they don't get along with other people and they don't like other people. And so they have a better time with animals than they do people. Well, that's their problem. They need to get over it. That doesn't have anything to do, however, with people having greater value than animals. Probably, and my guess is, that they get along with their animals better than they do people, because animals don't talk back. And animals don't tell them what I think about what you just said and what you just did, and so on and so forth. So I guess that makes it easier for them to deal with it in that way. But again, Jesus is very clear here. And he's God, by the way. And as God in the flesh, he's saying that animals are not as valuable as human beings. I'm glad I was able to point that out. Now, verse 12, it came to pass in those days that he went out to the mountain to pray and continued all night in prayer to God. Now, this is where we ended our class last week. I made the observation last week that Jesus did this more than one time. It was a regular occurring thing for him to find a quiet place to go off and pray, and we noted that last week. But it's also important to note that what he's getting ready to do, he's preparing to name certain men whom he will call apostles. He will name them, give them the title apostle. Now, this question about apostleship came up in class today, and it's an interesting question because the word apostle itself generally just means messenger, someone who is dispatched to deliver a message and or to represent another person and or entity, maybe a country. We might think ambassador might be a better word that we might associate with the actual meaning of apostle. But in the New Testament, when Jesus named the apostles, as he does here, these individuals were not just ordinarily sent men. In fact, one of the students in my class this morning aptly observed that in the limited commission, Jesus sent out 70. And so in that sense, there were 70 apostles, but not in the technical sense that we understand that term as it's used here in Luke chapter 6. It's interesting too that Luke says he named them apostles. And so apostles in the New Testament, the ones that Jesus called and named, carried with them authority that was delegated to them by Christ himself. And for a further discussion on that, which we're not going to get into tonight, I would encourage you to read John chapters 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. It's kind of a long interview, but this is an interview that Jesus had with these very men that we're about to read about. And so he's going to name these apostles, and we'll say more about them in just a moment. But again, we have to understand that they're not just merely individuals that were sent with a message. They were that, but they had more authority than just that. They were actually representing the interest of Christ, and they were guided by the Holy Spirit in order to carry those things out accurately. And that's what the passages in John would indicate, that the Holy Spirit would be given to them and would guide them and lead them and remind them and reveal to them, et cetera, et cetera. So they had a strong ally working with them on behalf of their apostolic ministry. And so again, it's just important to recognize that distinction. But again, he's spending all night in prayer before he names these men. That suggests to me that the naming of these men wasn't haphazard. He didn't just say, I think I'll find a couple of guys and just call them apostles, and they'll be the ones that follow me. He didn't just haphazardly do this. But now, while we think about what I just said, I want you to consider that in this list is a notorious name that we would never name our child. You wouldn't name your child Judas. Now, you may call him that because he betrayed his brother or something. And I had sisters that I would call Judas sometimes because they would throw me under the bus and say things about me that were clearly not true and exaggerate maybe something I might have innocently done, blowing it totally out of proportion. I might have called them Judas a time or two, but you wouldn't name your child Judas. But here's the thing, Jesus actually called this man into the ministry. It's interesting, isn't it? At some point, Jesus knew what he would do. Now, the question you may have, I do, did he know when he called him what he would do? Perhaps he did. But Peter said something interesting as he quoted the psalm in Acts chapter 1, as he mentioned Judas falling from his bishopric, in other words, from his apostolic office. He fell from that. So he was actually an apostle, a disciple, apostle. He was a follower of Jesus. He worked with him and on his behalf, and later then betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. He wouldn't be the only person ever to betray Jesus for monetary means or other means. Many have betrayed Jesus for various and asunder reasons. But Judas, of course, is at the top of the list. My question is, though, did Jesus call him because he was already full of the devil and intending to do this? Or thinking he's a perfect candidate for that? Maybe. Or maybe he called him and he wasn't like that at all. And he knew, however, that one of them eventually would succumb to Satan's influence and be used for that purpose. I don't know. It's just one of those questions we don't have the answer to. But I will say this, he spent all night in prayer before he named these men, which suggests to me, before we do stuff in the church, before we name a new elder or name a new deacon, or before we fire and hire a new preacher, which you may be thinking about right now, probably are. Before we do something like that, maybe we should spend all night in prayer asking God, especially the preacher thing. I mean, ask God, should we get rid of him or not? I mean, is it time or not? I mean, we really need to be a little more careful, I believe, in the way we go about conducting church business. And certainly when it comes to the appointment of elders or deacons or preachers or Bible class teachers or some new curriculum or whatever, we need to spend time praying about those things. Jesus certainly, I believe, provides an example of that. Now, I want to take a few minutes and talk to you about prayer, because I know what's on your mind, and we hear about prayer a lot. In Luke 18, you can turn there if you'd like, but I'll just kind of summarize. Jesus told us that men ought always to pray and not lose heart. In fact, we'll just let's just skip over there very quickly and just touch on a few verses here, kind of set the stage. Luke 18, let's see, begin, I think it's verse 1. He spoke a parable to them, men ought always to pray and not lose heart, saying, there was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God and not regard men. There was a widow in that city, and she came to him saying, get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while, but afterward he said within himself, though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. And the Lord said, hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? It's interesting, because he's using this parable of this horrible man. He's a horrible judge, doesn't care about God, doesn't care about man, but he's going to give this woman what she wants because she's going to pester the life out of me. So I'm going to give her what she wants. But Jesus is saying we need to pray like that. That's how we should pray. But remember, when you are praying to God, he's not an unjust judge. He's very just, and he's kind, and he's compassionate, and he's loving. And so when you cry out to him day and night, trust and rest assured he's going to answer you, though he bears long with you. Now, we hear this and we think, yeah, but why would he bear long with anybody? Why make people wait? I don't have the answer to that question. I can't tell you why God would make me wait for something that I want yesterday, and the Lord knows I need it. And so why hasn't he already done it for me or gotten it for me? I don't always know. I wish I could tell you. I do know this, that sometimes Satan uses the delay in response to our prayer as an opportunity to attack our faith. And to weaken our resolve and to make us lack our fortitude in standing against whatever it is we're praying to have help with. We assume God didn't hear me because he delayed answering me. I shared this with the class on Wednesday morning a few weeks ago. So if you were there, you can tune me out. You probably already have anyway. But in Daniel chapter 10, there's an interesting account here, and I'll just share it with the class here as well, because I believe in this particular exchange, we learn something about what Jesus is here, I think, encouraging us to do, is we need to pray and not grow weary in praying. But let's just look at the text together and see what happened with Daniel. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood the message and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant food, not meat or wine came into my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. Now, on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great terror fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone when I saw this great vision, and no strength remained in me. For my vigor was turned to frailty in me, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. He passed out. He fainted. Suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the word that I speak to you and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. While he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. He said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. And I have come because of your words, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I hadn't been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Now I've come to make you understand what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision refers to many days yet to come. Now, I don't know what your understanding is here, but let me just bring you up to speed. When he speaks of the Prince of Persia, he's not talking about a human being. He's talking about an unseen spiritual entity. And he refers to that entity as the Prince of Persia. And he also refers to Michael, named individual entity, who's also in the unseen realm. He's known in the New Testament as the title of Archangel. So this is a high order of angel. And so Michael is later identified as the Prince of Israel, the one who was given charge of the nation of Israel. So there's a bad entity over Persia bringing about bad things, and yet there are good entities or unseen angels, or however you describe these spirit beings, who are battling each other over the rise and fall of nations. That's fascinating. I mean, what's going to happen in Ukraine? I don't know. But I know one thing. It's not just the Russian and Ukrainian forces. It's spiritual forces involved. Something's happening. I don't know what. Only God knows the answer to that question. But that's fascinating when you think about it just from that angle. But here's the thing that I want you to pay attention to. Daniel's praying. And he's gone 3 full weeks. And no answer to it. He's fasting. He's praying. He's earnest. Nothing. But when finally the answer comes to him, what does the answer say? From the first day you uttered this request, your prayer was heard. And I was dispatched to answer you. But I had to detour a while, 21 days to be exact, to go fight the Prince of Persia. That's fascinating. I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool. Now, I've said before, and I want to say this again. When we pray, the whole world revolves around me. You ever look at the world that way? I don't think I'm the only person that thinks that way, am I? Really? I'm not 2 years old, but I do think that at this point in my life, when I pray as though I'm the only one God cares about. I'm the only one he hears, the only one he has time for. And so he's listening just to me. There's 7.5 billion other people on this planet. And not just people, but there are unseen spiritual forces, invisible to the naked eye, that are also working in this world, this realm that we are a part of. We don't see it, but it's there. It's happening all the time. There's a whole lot going on. It's like a Rubik's Cube. And I'm like, who can solve a Rubik's Cube? Anybody in the class? Had Mark Wilson. I'm pretty sure he could, but you can. You think out of your left brain, don't you? Or your right brain? Joey can? I think that's weird. I don't understand it. Some people have the ability to just like, how did you do that? But they all line up on this. But I mean, you got all these different sides and the colors have to line up. And anyway, some people can do that. Some people can't. But imagine the universe and you're in charge of the universe. And somebody here in Carroll County is praying to you and asking for something. And you say, okay, I want to answer that prayer. But to answer that prayer, I got to deal with that prayer. And I got to deal with that request. I got to deal with this supplication. I mean, it's not just you. It's you and you and you and you and you and you. And everybody's connected. Everything's connected. And so God is doing what needs to be done for the best interest of his kingdom and of his people. And sometimes it means I got to wait. I just have to wait. Isn't that what faith is supposed to do for us? It allows me to have to wait. I don't know. I don't understand. But I'm not supposed to know. I'm not supposed to understand. But I am supposed to trust that God hears me and that God will bless me. So when it comes to trusting and believing, that's what James really literally is saying. If you lack wisdom, ask of God that gives to all men liberally. That's a beautiful thought. God just continually gives and gives and gives. He gives liberally. He's not begrudging. He just keeps on giving. But when you ask for it, make sure that you ask in faith, not doubting. If you doubt, you won't receive anything from the Lord. Faith and prayer go hand in hand. And so both are a part, an integral part of any child of God. I don't care what covenant you're living in, but particularly in the Christian age, if we're following an example of Christ. In James 5:13, long discussion there about if you're sick, call for the elders of the church. They can pray over you and anoint you with oil and, recover you and pray for your sin to be forgiven. That's powerful. But then he mentions Elijah, who was a man like ourselves, who prayed that it not rain, and it didn't rain. And then he prayed again, and it rained. Now, I don't know why James used that example, because Elijah's ministry was, it featured some spectacular miracles. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it, when you hear James referring to that incident in the ministry of Elijah. Why did he refer to that one? Because if you go back and read in the account in Kings, where Elijah prayed that it rained, it did rain, but it didn't rain from a clear sky. It rained because there was a cloud building over the sea and the wind was picking up. And that's how rain is produced. That's how rain comes. That's how it rained the other day. It started the same way. I thought I could be like Elijah, and I could be watching this cloud gathering water, and it's going to be dropping the water on the ground anytime now. That's what rain does. It comes from the sky, but it comes from rain clouds. And so when you look at the account in Kings, that's what we discover, is that Elijah prayed that it not rain, and it didn't rain. Who controls the rain? God. In fact, he sends rain. Hey, I'm talking here. He sends rain on the just and on the unjust. And so that's God that does that. But can we pray and say, God, have it rain? Or God, please withhold the rain? Nah, we couldn't do that. Well, don't bother praying. If that's what you think, don't waste your breath. But what if you really believe that God could hear you? The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. We really do ourselves a disservice because we are not men and women of faith like we need to be. But I don't believe James just haphazardly pulled out that particular part of Elijah's ministry and said, oh, by the way, he prayed it wouldn't rain, but you should do the same thing. He's encouraging us to pray, and that's a big deal. But if you're thinking, yeah, but that was Elijah, it never happened for me, it won't. Trust me, it won't, because that's what you think, because that's what you believe, because that's how weak your faith is. But if you had faith as the grain of you would say to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and it would happen. You believe that? Nah. Then you don't believe what Jesus said. So again, you say, well, that has to be a miracle. Does it? God can work in other ways and is always working in other ways. I know one thing, we really need to concentrate on prayers and increasing our prayer life. It would make us better off in every sense of the word. We'd draw closer to God, number one. Our faith would increase. We might see wonderful things happening in our lives, and in the church we didn't think could happen before. It's a win-win-win proposition. Yes, you had a comment?
Quick story.
Okay.
January 2nd, 2002, my father had prostate cancer and colon cancer. They told my mother, he's not coming home. Just go home, prepare everything. She said, yes, he is. My faith is strong. My husband's coming home. He said, no, man, he's really not. So my mother told everybody in there, like us family members, if you don't think that daddy's coming home, then you need to leave the hospital. He is coming home. The doctors kept telling him, no, he's not, man. He has prostate cancer, colon cancer. This man's in his 60s. It's not going to happen. Just break up. We understand they like brought people in to talk to her to try to calm her down or whatever. She said, listen, my faith is strong in God. My husband is going home. My dad lived 10 years past that day.
10 years past that.
They told her he was not coming home that evening.
She said, if you don't believe it, get out of here. Yeah, we don't need anybody pulling us down, do we? We need people building us up and increasing our faith. Now, okay. Let's go back to, thank you for sharing that, by the way. Let's go to Luke chapter 6. And let's just pick up with verse 13. When it was day, he called his disciples to himself, and from them, that is from the disciples, he chose 12, whom he also named apostles. Simon, whom he also named Peter, Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called the Zealot, Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who also became a traitor. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail with all these individuals. That's not the point of the class tonight. It is fascinating when you look at this list and who he chose. It's a variety of people from a variety of walks in life. But that's the nature of the kingdom of God. That's the richness of the kingdom of God. We're not all the same. We don't all bring the same talents. We don't all bring the same abilities. God uses all of us, however, to fulfill his purpose. And I think that's illustrated in this selection of these men. So when he came down with them and stood on a level place. Now, let me just, before we read this, before we get into the sermon, I don't believe this is the same sermon that Jesus preached in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Now, it could be. Many believe that it is the same sermon. It's just recorded in a different way. But if you recall in Matthew 5, Jesus went up onto a mountain and prayed. And there he taught that lesson. Here, it definitely says, as we begin this, that he stood on a level place. It's almost like Luke wanted to say, it's not a mountain. It's a level place. So it's the opposite of a mountain, right? So again, just kind of
in a plane.
In a plane? Okay, well that's not a mountain. So he's in a different place whenever he's preaching this. Again, we have some similar people in the crowd, but that's not hard to explain either because that region of the world itself is not that vast. And so wherever he was preaching and whatever he was doing, there would be people from all these places. And so there would be some cross-pollination in that sense. But there were people from Judea, Jerusalem, from the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon who came to hear him and be healed of their diseases, as well as those who were tormented with unclean spirits, and they were healed. And the whole multitude sought to touch him, for power went out from him and healed them all. So he lifted up his eyes toward his disciples and said, "Blessed are your poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when men hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven, for in like manner their fathers did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full, you shall hunger. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who spitefully use you. Take him who strikes you on the one cheek, offer the other also, and from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, and do not ask them back. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. For he is kind to the unthankful and evil. Therefore, be merciful, just as your Father also is merciful. Judge not, you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. And he spake a parable to them. Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into the ditch? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is perfectly trained will be like his teacher. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, brother, let me remove the speck that is in your eye, when you yourself do not see the plank that is in your own eye? Hypocrite! First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly remove the speck that is in your brother's eye. For a good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush. The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. But why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the thing which I say? Whoever comes to me and hears my sayings and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house, who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when the flood rose, the stream beat vehemently against the house and could not shake it, for it was founded on the rock. But he who heard and did nothing is like a man who built a house on the earth without a foundation, against which the stream beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. Let me ask you this question. Why do you suppose people assume this sermon and the Sermon on the Mount, as we call it in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, is the same sermon? Why do people say that?
Same material.
A lot of the same material. All I can say is I am vindicated by that observation. Because I know that when you preach for any group of people for more than a couple of weeks, you're probably going to preach something similar to what you preached. In fact, I forgot what I preached a couple of weeks ago, so I might just get up and preach it again. And yeah, didn't you preach that? No, you just misremembered it. I haven't preached that in a long time. Man. But preachers struggle with that. To be honest with you, every preacher does. We want to find fresh material and new material, and so we struggle from week to week. I don't want to repeat myself, but if I am repeating myself, I'm actually doing my job, because one of the things that an evangelist is supposed to do is to remind the brethren of things they already know. And so my daddy used to tell me, and I think he's right about this, just dust it off, preach it again, and just shout in a different place and nobody will notice. Well, that's probably true. I do that quite a bit. Just change a little emphasis here and there, and you can get away with it. But, if I'm doing that, or if any preacher is doing that, we're in good company, because it's been done by others, including Jesus. It's kind of like following a political campaign. If you've ever done that, you might hear a speaker speak, in Chicago one week, speak in Atlanta the next week, and speak the very same thing, and yet he might emphasize something a little different in Atlanta than he did in Chicago, or maybe in Washington, or some other place, depending on the venue, depending on the people. He might bring out certain things, but he's going to be repeating a lot of the same things, because that's just the nature of a political campaign. Well, there's a sense in which, as Jesus goes about his ministry, he's doing some of the same kinds of things. So he's preaching some of the same material. So it shouldn't alarm us that you're reading it, but you will notice, while there's a lot of similarity, there are some differences. And the way they're worded and the things that are emphasized, some things are left out, some things are brought in. So again, I think that's just interesting. Woe to you when all speak well of you. I have no problem in this department. I'm okay. far as this goes. But there are some people who, and some people are really good at this. I mean, they excel. Nobody's saying anything good about you, but that's not exactly what he means. Of course, he explained what he means. What he means is when you're preaching, especially, or when you're standing up for the truth, it's not a question of, can you say that and preach that and get away with it without alienating people or upsetting people or making people mad. If a preacher starts calculating his messages on that basis, he has failed to do his duty as a preacher. He needs to stop preaching, because it's not a question of what if I preach and somebody gets mad. I don't want people to get mad. I don't want to alienate people. But I do intend to faithfully, as best I can, preach the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And there are going to be many instances when that just don't sit well with people. They're not going to like it. They're going to get upset about it. They might even get mad, might threaten me or threaten the church or threaten the elders or whatever. I mean, that happens, unfortunately. And what Jesus is here warning about is you cannot kowtow to that. You cannot allow that to dictate what you do. It's kind of a spinoff on what we're seeing in this cancel culture thing, where we can't use certain words, we can't talk about certain things, certain topics are off the table for discussion, and so people have their hands tied, they feel hogtied or whatever. We really need to get up, brush ourselves off, quit you like men, and be strong and stand against these maniacs that are trying to restrain common sense and decency. If people don't like it when you preach the truth, I'm sorry, you'll have to kill me, blow me up, burn me, whatever you're going to do. But the truth is going to have to be preached. And I think that far too many have just given into that. Isn't it refreshing sometimes when you see someone come along and says, I'm just going to do what the right thing is anyway, whether you like it or not. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I don't know about the man. I've never met the man. The richest man on planet Earth right now, saying something, I guess. But he just tried to buy Twitter. I don't know if he's going to be successful or not. Trying to buy Twitter. Why? Why is he trying to buy Twitter? Because he knows that the kids in their pajamas in their basements that run this thing and eat their granola bars, sorry, but that's what they do, and wear their flip-flops. They're sitting in their basement and they're dictating to the rest of us, what we're supposed to talk about and what we can and can't talk about. And Elon Musk said, enough of you kids. It's time for the grown-ups to take over. So hopefully he'll be successful and maybe he'll do what he says he's going to do. But who knows? He may buy it and just be worse than the kids that are running it now. I don't know. But I do know one thing. I don't care what the world demands of us. What we really should be concerned about is what does God require of us? And that's what God is really saying here in this sermon. Woe to you when all men speak well of you. If you're trying to win friends and influence people, great. But make sure you never compromise truth while you do that. As you want men to do to you, what do we call this? The golden rule. What's the silver rule? I'll do to you what you've done to me. I'll treat you the way you treat me, right? That's not what Jesus is saying. He's not saying that. He's saying whatever you want men to do for you. How do you want to be treated? How do you want people to speak to you? How do you want people to interact with you? How do you want people to come to your aid when you need it, et cetera, et cetera? What would you want men to do for you? Well, that's what you should do for them. If that's what you want, that's what you should give, because you're probably going to get what you give. And I think that's inherent in this as well. He says something profound: love your enemies. And he uses God, the Most High, as an illustration. He did that in the Sermon on the Mount, also in the Gospel of Matthew. Same sermon idea, spoken a little differently, but same sermon idea. God sends rain on the thankful, the unthankful, the just and the unjust, the good and the evil. He doesn't show any distinction. He blesses everybody. People are blessed by God, even those who don't acknowledge him and don't thank him for it. They're still, nevertheless, blessed by God. And Jesus says that's how we should behave. We should treat people that way. Well, I'm not going to do another thing for them. I did something for them and they didn't say thank you. Well, if that's what you're looking for, you're probably not thinking the way Jesus would have you to think. In fact, I know you're not. He said, don't do it for that reason. You give because you love your enemies. But if we love our enemies, certainly we should love each other. One thing we talked about in class today also, about how we should just be erupting in the church, overflowing with love. And the world needs to see our love, our concern, our compassion, our understanding, our patience with each other. So again, love your enemies, but love each other in the process. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, will men give into your hands. So if you want people to be good to you and treat you right and help you out, well then you be that kind of person too. And likely that's what will happen for you. People will treat you well because you treated them well. They'll give to you because you've given to them. And again, these are just simple common sense things, and yet they're not really common sense, are they? We assume it is because we've heard these words and we've accustomed to think this way. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things I say? It's interesting because in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the latter part of chapter 7, he said, not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. He does the will of my Father. But here he said, not the will of the Father, but don't do what I say. But I want to remind you that if Jesus said it, the Father's saying it also, because Jesus doesn't say something different than what the Father says. So if I don't do what Jesus said, I'm not doing what the Father said, and vice versa. You can't have one without the other. Why do you call me Lord and don't do the things I say? And so again, it's easy, isn't it, to fall into that trap and say, yes, Lord, but then not do what the Lord would have us to do. Any thoughts or comments?
In the Greek, when God breathed life into Adam's nostrils, when we talk about life of animals and man, there's an S on that Greek word also that illustrates man. That's two different words for life. Life, animals without a spirit, and life of man with spirit.
Yeah, we're made in the image of God.
There's an S on that Greek word, other than animals that
Distinguishes us.
and we have spirit.
We are the apple of God's eye. I mean, literally, the universe revolves around us. We are. It revolves around us. That's amazing. And it certainly should remind us we are of great value, shouldn't it? Every one of us have extraordinary value. Number 812, please, in your song books. I think we still got a few other classes to come up, don't we? We're missing some, aren't we? Here they come. Did y'all feed them candy in class? They used to. So we put a stop to that. Oh, good. 812, again, in your song books. I'm happy to announce that today is my mother's birthday. She's a great blessing to me and really to all of us, but particularly to me because I am her favorite child of 5. And you could ask my sisters, any one of them, they'll confirm that. Is it that true, Lynn? I'm the favorite baby. Okay. Okay. And Adam's the favorite grandchild. Okay. Love one another, peace and unity. Okay. My father said it well. My mother's celebrating her 30th birthday for the 3rd time. And so that is a great milestone. And you look great, and you are in good health, and we're thankful to the good Lord for you in your life. Who's going to sing happy birthday at the end? Adam, the favorite grandchild, will have to lead happy birthday. Don't forget, elders and deacons have their meeting this Sunday at 8 o'clock in the library. Ladies Bible study, Digging Deep, will be Monday, May the 2nd at 6 p.m. Please bring finger foods. Pantry unloading for Midwest Food Bank will be arriving May the 3rd. So if you can help with unloading, please make plan to be here at 11:30 on that day. The annual Youth Day at Bremen will be on May the 7th from 9:30 to 2. Lunch will be provided. The theme is Picture This, Seeing God's Plan. And the speaker will be Josh Posey and Joe Wells. So we want to remind all of our young people about that. Area-wide singing, April the 29th at Bowden at 7 p.m. So I guess the area-wide singings are back up and running. I didn't know that. Good. So April the 29th, which is next Friday. Yeah, Friday. Okay. At Bowden. We have a rather lengthy prayer list tonight. I do want to mention Davis Wood's wife and daughter are on the Appalachian Trail. She's there for her autoimmune system. This is supposed to help improve that. Maybe we ought to just take off and go hiking, but I really hope and pray that it goes well with her and that they will be safe and that they won't be gone 6 months. Maybe they'll be back sooner than that, but I certainly want to remember them in prayer. Dean Stone is back on the vent after they put the shunt in his liver, and hopefully will be off that before long. Michael Weaver's surgery went well today, but he's in the hospital recovering. Hopefully we'll get to go home tomorrow, later, perhaps Friday, depending on his progress tomorrow. Cheryl Lahan. See, it doesn't go the way it's spelled. Anyway, Cheryl Wayne, Uncle Cheryl, okay, has suffered a couple of mini strokes. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to have impaired much at this point, but they are monitoring him closely to see if they can figure out what that is causing that. Bubba has suffered another stroke and is back in the Carrollton Hospital and certainly in need of our prayer. Charlie Prince has liver and lung cancer, and we just learned that this morning. Jonathan Cunningham is going to the Middle East tomorrow for a mission with the CIA and will not be back until, I guess it will be Saturday or Sunday. Sunday? Oh, it's in there? Oh, it's on the internet. Oh, I should have said that. Okay. So secret ops. So, is he not going to be here for the birthday party? We'll cancel the flight then. We've got to wait until after the birthday party. You can do stuff. Who does? He came to see her today. Oh, he came to see her today? Oh, okay. Janet Sadler's brother is facing apparently, did you hear from her this evening? You haven't heard anything? Did you hear, Helen, where you at? Did you hear anything from Janet this afternoon after the doctor met with her? Okay, well, they were hoping to have something confirmed, but it looks like they're going to be putting his brother on a mechanical heart, which will change his life completely. But however, it will also prolong his life. Otherwise, he won't be here long on this earth. So very serious situation with Janet's brother. So please remember him in a very special way in your prayers. Anyone else we need to mention on the prayer list? 812 has been announced as our song of invitation. We ended our class tonight at the end of this sermon recorded in Luke chapter 6, where Jesus was actually saying, "Why do you call me Lord and do not the things that I say?" It's easy to do, easy to fall into that trap, that mindset of saying, well, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, and yes, he's God, and yes, he's Lord, and so on and so forth, and yet fail to do the things he's asked us to do in our lives. And that can begin with someone who says, yes, I believe that he's the Son of God, I believe he died for me, but you've not yet repented and confessed and been baptized into Christ for the remission of your sins. I mean, calling him Lord is a wonderful thing, but it's not enough until you've actually submitted to his lordship and his authority and have demonstrated that by doing what he requires. Maybe someone present tonight who needs to obey the gospel or need to be restored to their first love. If we can help you, please make your need known right now while together we stand as we sing.
All things are ready. Come to the feast. Come